What's up everybody, and welcome back to another video, and welcome to the end of season 1. It's over, guys. It's finally over. No. Now thankfully this isn't my final video on season 1. I do still have a few others in the works, my overall review, my tier list of each episode and everything else like that. But after that's all concluded, well, it's the end of a chapter, a long and arduous chapter. Nah, I'm kidding. I love series 1, season 1, series 14. God damn it, man. And today I'm gonna talk about it. I'm gonna talk about everything because this is a peculiar one. Today is going to be the last, for a long while, community reaction video, going over everyone's thoughts and feelings about the finale to season 1, The Legend of Ruby Sunday, and the Empire of Death. And I'm kind of sad about it, man. These videos are my favorite to do. So to celebrate the last in a while, I have picked out more comments than I'd care to count. I have truly outdone myself here, people. This may not be 100% true, but I'm like 99% sure that there were more comments in this video than ever before. And allow me, before we move on, just to say thank you so much for all the support on the channel as of recent. This month was massive for me, this one that just passed. And I am so glad to have the best community in the world backing me all the way. You guys are the GOATs. And speaking of which, with the season finished, the stage is set. I have so much more content coming, guys. You don't even know. So don't forget to leave a like. Don't forget to subscribe. I'm being so for real, man. You do not want to miss this. But anyway, as I was saying, there are a lot of comments here, guys. However, before we dive into that, I have a few comments of my own that I want to make on the season as a whole. That's a lie, I have a lot of comments. Series 14 has been a wild ride for me, and now that it's over and I've had a night to sleep on things after Empire of Death, I have a lot of thoughts. A lot. Guys, let me warn you now, this conversation is going to be pretty wild because, as I said, I plan to touch on everything. I want to talk for a long time, and where better to start than at the end. The Empire of Death has divided the community straight down the middle with its controversial answers to its year-long mysteries. Stephen Russell Davies pulled a fast one on us with the revelation that Ruby's mum was actually Lucy Miller from Big Finish. Well, it's a bold strategy, but let's see if it pays off for him. I kid, of course. It was actually Louise Miller, not from Big Finish. It's an easy mistake to make. But where do I stand? What do I think? I think it's fine. Now, if you watched my last video where I gave my initial thoughts, you'd recall that I was not all too invested in the Ruby's mum mystery whatsoever. I couldn't care less, I'm not gonna lie to you. And so this reveal kind of rewards me for not caring in a backwards way, which is probably something that it shouldn't do. However, I said, and I still stand by it, that it is a very, very boring and mundane twist to have in a science fiction drama like Doctor Who. Maybe if it was a one-off character, maybe if this was one episode, but for a full story arc, for a year-long plot, it just doesn't have that oomph, you know, that push. But on the other end of the spectrum, I've seen a lot of people say stuff like, oh my goodness, I cried. And I've just got to ask, really? Seriously? You're crying at the Doctor and Ruby leaving? She's back next time, bruh. I say that. I never get emotional, even slightly, at Doctor Who. I'm not gonna lie to you guys. So these elements of the episodes are always gonna fall flat for me. I didn't feel a thing when Rose left, and by Amy and Clara's drawn out exits, at that point I was kind of annoyed, to be honest. But that's just me being me over here. What do I think about the story decision from a broader standpoint? I said it was fine, but why? It's complicated. In my previous video, I said that the twist was an anti-twist, in that the twist is there is no twist, which can work sometimes, but other times can feel a little bit anticlimactic. Now, there are a few questions, many questions raised from this answer, namely, where does the snow come from? Why did the memory change? Why was she blocked on the camera? Why was she wearing that strange hood? And right now, I will do my best to answer all of them. Don't worry, guys, DW Fan 921 stepping through. I'm here to save the day. I think the snow and the music comes from the rawness of the memory that night holds. I think specifically it is the action of the woman pointing at the sign that creates the snow. Now, this moment was a bit... She was naming you. I mean, it's a good effort. Didn't make the most sense. But I think what they mean when they say that she named Ruby by pointing at the sign is that her doing that action of her naming the baby, that is what evoked the snow. The music, what sealed it as an event in history. Because somehow everyone knew from that point that the baby was Ruby. Even though no one was around to see the woman point, she still somehow managed to succeed in naming the child. And I think it is that event that gives the memory its power. Stories have power. This memory is an incredible story. As Harbinger says in The Legend of Ruby Sunday, it's all very Dickensian. And I think it is being provided that meaning by Mrs. Flood, who is very likely to be the god of stories or words to that effect. She's always telling stories, looking at the camera, saying stuff like that. So I imagine she has a part to play if you want to get invested in another Russell T Davies mystery box. That is my explanation for what the snow and all of that means. What I can't answer is why the memory changed. That's the one thing I don't really get. In an episode with tons of leaps in logic, i.e. the memory TARDIS, Sutek hitching a ride, the TARDIS beam. What the hell is that? TARDIS can now summon people through time and space? Come on now. For me, the memory changing is the one bit where I'm like, why even do that? Just put it in the Christmas special. It would work so much better there too. Now, if I'm being honest here, what I think happened is Russell T Davies was meant to put it in the special and either forgot or it got cut or only realized during Series 14's writing stage how important it was meant to be and then wrote it into Space Babies. Because what that leads me on to is the chaotic behind the scenes this series seems to have had. All series, something which I have been praising is the premium feel to each episode. Not just from a production standpoint, because of course, but also from a writing standpoint. These episodes are polished, man. Something like Boom, hell, even something like The Devil's Chord have clearly gone through a lot of iterations, a lot of refining, fine-tuning, and they've come out pitch perfect. Get it? Which is why it kind of pains me to say that the Empire of Death and The Legend of Ruby Sunday, to some extent, do not have that same level of polish. Now, they still look amazing. Of course they do. Incredibly well-directed episodes here. But from the writing standpoint, there must have been a crunch or something because it is just not up to the same standard. That's not to say it isn't well written, by the way. I do think it is expertly written, but it isn't as well thought out. There wasn't enough time for it to come out just fully right, and you can see that in the behind the scenes. There's so much here that was either cut or wasn't fully able to be put in. Lots of shortcuts, lots of moments that don't quite make sense. I pointed out the TARDIS beam earlier. The memory TARDIS just gets dropped and never mentioned again. There was a whole action set piece against Zombie Civil Sun that was entirely cut. And why? To make way for that unbelievably prolonged epilogue sequence. I made a joke in my video that this episode felt like the Return of the King extended edition, in that it just does not end. Empire of Death is a good episode, but what it doesn't do is play to its strengths. It has some really goddamn cool stuff in there. Obviously Sutek, the Susan Triad stuff, the universe being destroyed, but also the quest to stop him, the search for metal, that scene with Kind Woman. The problem is, the episode has one element that relatively is rather weak, which is the mother reveal at the end. Yeah, I have no problem with Sutek. People saying, oh, he was defeated too easily and everything was undone first time. I don't mind any of that. The problem I have with the episode is the mother reveal, and more specifically, how long it goes on for. It is eternal. It is an infinite Tsukiyomi of a scene just going on and on and on. Play to your strengths. This part of the episode is the weakest element by far, and yet it takes up almost 20 minutes of the runtime. If I was in the studio watching them cook this up, do you know what I would say? Re-edit the episode. The twist itself is a whole separate matter, and trust me, we'll get into it, but more than anything, it is just so boring.
How does that work? Where does that expression come from? It doesn't make any sense.
Make it stop!
It doesn't make sense. Life doesn't make sense. You know, Wade, look at me. You're a fierce warrior. Happy-go-lucky guy. These tears
Damn it, Wade!
It goes on forever, and more than likely, at least a portion of the audience isn't gonna be fully on board. So what you're doing is you're forcing that sense of unenjoyment to fester for longer than it needs to. Do you see what I mean? Do you know what to do? Okay, phone a friend. DW Fan 91 steps in to save the day. Empire of Death, hot fix. This is how you do it. You have a great episode. Empire of Death, all of the ingredients are there for greatness. How do you fix it? First of all, you add back in all those great scenes that you cut. They're all well and good you talking about them, but they should be in the actual episode. Secondly, we need to cut down this ending. 4 endings in one episode is not okay. We need one. You know what we do. We condense them all into one. Ruby finds out her mom. Boom. Then we go into the TARDIS. This scene. Then Ruby gets a ping on her phone. Not that they found her dad, but that they found her mum. Then the Doctor and Ruby say their goodbyes. Ruby then goes to meet her mum in the coffee shop, and across the street, watching from afar, is Mrs. Flood, who then goes into her whole spiel, and the episode ends there. From 15 minutes to 7 minutes. I cut down your episode, keeping in all the same beats, bada bing, bada boom. I just don't understand why we spent so much time on something no one cares about. Like, I mean, it is sweet.
From what I've seen of your world, do you think anybody votes for sweet?
And it's necessary for the story, but being real is the least necessary part. And you're kind of holding the audience hostage by dragging it out that long. 15 minutes? We're serious? Do you see what I mean? Play to your strengths. You have a relatively weak part of the episode, this reveal. You bury it in between awesome scenes so that by the time, you know, Sutex had this big chase epic scene hurling through the vortex, the bitter aftertaste of the reveal of Ruby's mom is kind of lessened. But again, all of this stuff in the episode is well written. The whole series is well written. Being real, there is no problem in the writing. It is merely a problem in the post-production. Someone should be able to tell, hey, these scenes are dragging on too long. We can get the same information across faster and it'll be more emotionally resonant if we do so. Because now, when people come out of the episode, they don't talk about the Sutex stuff. They don't talk about the action or the chase or the destroyed universe. They talk about the twist. Because that's all they've been subjected to at the very end there. In fact, it's dragged on so long that no one even cares what Mrs. Flood has to say by the end of it. You cut down this mom ordinary drama from 4 big scenes to 1 big scene, condense it all, it hits 4 times harder. And the audience isn't so overwhelmed with it that they focus on this one part of the episode that is its weakest element. It just is, man. This mom stuff is the episode's weakest element. I hate to say it, but it's true. By the way, this isn't just a thing with Empire of Death. Every episode should play to its strengths because there are bad parts of every episode, even good episodes. But if those episodes are good, and especially if they're the best of the best, they always find a way to shift the focus off the parts of these stories that are the weakest, just so the audience doesn't focus on it, you know, a little bit of smoke and mirrors. And basically, what Empire of Death is doing is shining a massive bright light on its biggest major problem, as shown by the fact that I'm however many minutes into this video and I'm still talking about the twist. It's not even that bad of a twist. I get what they were going for, but it isn't a big twist. You can't spend 15 minutes of your episode on a small twist. This is why the episode is an anticlimax. But that doesn't mean it's bad. Again, something I want to reiterate is the fact that this episode is good. It has so many goddamn good parts, so many scenes I love, so many bits that land exactly how they're supposed to land. And I love the epic climax. As I said, hurtling through the vortex, it looks awesome. And as always, the performance from the main cast is interstellar. We all know this. But there are just a few small errors that leave audience members with a bad taste in their mouth when walking out. And I should know. I went to the cinema. People weren't happy. And it's interesting because Russell T Davies has come out and said that this twist was done in response to the Star Wars sequel trilogy, and in particular The Last Jedi, which is no shock to me. It's one of the first things I thought of, but it got me thinking, why? Okay everyone, I'm about to go on a mega massive tangent here, so be warned. I have sat and thought about this for years now, but after over genuinely half a decade, I have come to the conclusion that Star Wars Episode 8, The Last Jedi, is the most hated movie of all time. and I don't think it's particularly close. It was a cultural shift, genuinely, a shift in culture worldwide, not even just English-speaking countries. This movie was not liked. It was not even tolerated. It was derided. I have never seen a reaction to a movie like this before, and it changed everything around it. It actually created a whole genre of content on YouTube. Those hate farmers, you know, the people who you've seen in the recommended, that was The Last Jedi. The demand for channels like that skyrocketed so high thanks to that movie, that it made the career of countless a YouTube star. You see those hate videos with the ridiculous thumbnails and blatant misinformation talking about Doctor Who? Those started because of The Last Jedi. It all comes back to that movie. It impacted how all movies after it were seen, because there was such a backlash the world has never known and likely will never see again. I have never seen discussion around a movie be so toxic before. Of course, there were people who loved it, people who fought for it. That's why the conversations were so bloody. But overall, in general conversation, if you talk about it, you won't have to wait long before you meet someone who despises it. Not dislikes it, not even hates it, despises it. It is a despised movie. Again, I think overall, worldwide, it is the most hated film of all time. Even films which people will agree are like objectively bad on every level are not hated to the level that this film is. And the question that I have always wondered was why. I remember walking out of the cinema myself in 2017 after seeing it and thinking to myself, kind of simply, it was pretty cool. And then going online and seeing just the waves and waves of hate. And you would think that after so many years of people describing how much they hate it and why, I would get it. But you see, something you have to realize is that just because sometimes people explain the reasons as to why they don't like something, that doesn't mean that those are the actual reasons people don't like something. Like, for example, in this scene in The Last Jedi, I can't play it because of copyright. If you pause and you go frame by frame, a lot of the people in the background are moving in illogical ways. This is an argument used against The Last Jedi. And you know what? Fair. They are doing that. But that isn't why the movie is hated. That's something that people noticed when they were going through the movie frame by frame. In the cinema, there weren't people watching the film who were loving it up till that point, and then they saw that and were like, what the hell? So yes, that's a reason why people don't like The Last Jedi, but it's not the actual reason why people don't like the film. And it's the same with a lot of these CinemaSins style critiques of The Last Jedi, and that they don't really explain why people don't like the film at all, because the truth is, what people don't like about The Last Jedi is the vibe. It's something you can't quite put your finger on, and that's why people can spend hours and hours and hours and hours and hours talking about why they don't like it and still not be able to explain it properly. It's not that the bombs fall in space that's the problem. It's that in a lot of people's minds, the bombs do not gel with the Star Wars universe that they've had in their mind up to that point. The vibes are off. The characters just don't quite speak right in a way that their subconscious can tell, but they can't quite put their finger on. Luke Skywalker isn't what they wanted. There's no lightsaber fight. And Rey's parents are no one, which leads me back to the twists. I do find it funny and admirable that Rusty Davies looked at legit the most hated film of all time and said, yeah, I'm gonna do that. But now I'm gonna dissect why I think it works better here in The Last Jedi than in The Empire of Death. And also, hear me out, I'm not done talking about Star Wars just yet. Number one, it's way more epic here. There's fire all around them, the characters are crying, it's an emotional confrontation, things are heated, etc. Number two, Rey has been fighting for her parents to be someone. She dreams about them, she's desperate for answers in the same way that the audience are. She wants them to be big and important so damn bad. Number three, there isn't any real reason for Rey's parents to be important. There is Rey's immense skill in the Force, which anyone has the ability to have, which is the theme of the movie. But outside of that, the only other main piece of evidence that Rey is special or important is that Obi-Wan said her name in that one vision sequence in episode 7. I suppose Rey fighting off Kylo Ren's influence in episode 7 is another one of those, ooh, how is she so strong moments. But generally speaking, there isn't much evidence in universe that she has to necessarily be super important. Whereas Ruby, of course, has the snow, the music, all of that stuff, which regular people in that universe can't do. And number 4, most importantly of all, Rey knew the whole time. She's upset, she's crying because she has to admit the truth that she's known all along, which is that they were nobody. It's a hard pill to swallow and she's in tears because of it, because she so desperately wanted her story to be big and important. It comes at a crucial moment in the storyline where Kylo Ren then asks Rey to join him, and with how the movie has been going, with Snoke dying and all this unpredictable shit just happening left, right and center, you might actually think she's going to do it. It also plays into all the thematics of the storyline. Kylo Ren has been trying to distance himself from the legacy that he's attached to. Rey is so desperate to attach herself to a legacy. Both of them are going on extremes on the opposite end. Even haters of the movie gotta admit, Adam Driver plays it well. Not to me. He holds out his hand. It works, man. It works. And then you compare it to Empire of Death. It's a plain, regular day, no tension. She's completely ordinary. Ruby is happy. She's happy that she's ordinary. Everyone's smiling, then they just go and they meet her, and where's the drama? Again, I've already detailed how you fix it, but if you wanted to go the full 9 yards, you have the reveal happen right in front of Sutek. You have Ruby in tears, have Sutek laugh at her to show how truly evil he is, then have him be caught off guard. Ruby's like, she was just ordinary. Sutek's like, what? But how could this be? Then he starts laughing at how ironic it is, la-di-da. While he's distracted, we tie the leash, do all that. Then we get back home. The doctor's like, do you want to meet her? Ruby's crying. She says yes. They have that coffee scene. Then we go back to Ruby's house. She goes into the TARDIS just like the episode. She's like, but how come she's so ordinary? She says through tears. Then the doctor gives the explanation. Maybe with another little tease. And that the story of Ruby's family isn't over yet. And then, boom. But instead, I feel like we're taking all the wrong lessons away from The Last Jedi. I think The Last Jedi, surprise, surprise, is a flawed movie. I personally don't hate it. In fact, there are parts I actually really like and think are cool. Poe Dameron, I will always love you. He's just so goddamn cool, bruh. But for me, I gotta admit, the problems for the sequel trilogy come from The Force Awakens. Unpopular opinion, I know, but this one is my least favorite. Yes, even more so than The Rise of Skywalker, which is basically illegible, but I think it's funny. The Force Awakens, and I know this has been said to death, but it is true. It is a rip-off of the original Star Wars. It's not an original film. It doesn't really set up anything interesting or do anything new or worthwhile. People blame The Last Jedi for Luke Skywalker, even though The Force Awakens set it up so that was the only way he could possibly be. Also, did nobody watch the trailers? Didn't they get like 1 billion views? It's not really a surprise that in the movie Luke acts the way he does. He acts that way in the trailers too. Maybe I'm just a dumbass, I don't know. The problem with The Last Jedi for me is that it's way too small. It takes place over like a day, and it doesn't feel like the conflict is big enough to warrant a movie. Like this could be an episode of a spin-off or something like that. And something more massive and defining should be the movie. I mean, you look at every other Star Wars movie and they're like a massive caper and adventure where crazy shit just keeps happening one after the other. And then The Last Jedi is just like the ship moved from here to here and then another ship blew up and it happened in like 6 hours. Like, I will agree with Russell T Davies though. The Rise of Skywalker trying to undo all of that stuff in The Last Jedi is lame as hell. It's stupid. The thing is though, that all of these sequel movies have parts of them that I like and parts of them that I don't. What I dislike in The Force Awakens is that it's completely unoriginal and boring. What I like is that the action is great and Kylo Ren is a badass. What I dislike in The Last Jedi is that its story is such a small scale it probably shouldn't even be a movie. What I like is that it tries to take the franchise in a new and interesting direction and Kylo Ren is a badass. What I dislike in The Rise of Skywalker is that it's a nonsensical mess where things kind of just happen without any rhyme or reason. What I like about it is that it's funny. Oh, and Kylo Ren is a badass. The general point I'm trying to make here is that The Last Jedi is an incredibly divisive film that attempted to do a lot of unique narrative choices that have now proven to not work in a mainstream Hollywood blockbuster, where your best bet is almost always to go buy the book. I mean, whether you love or hate the movie, that's just an undeniable fact. And it's also proven that maybe Russell T Davies looking to this film might not have been his best bet, especially when he takes away all the wrong lessons. Did I ramble on long enough? Let's talk about The Legend of Ruby Sunday. Part 1 to the finale is a lot less complex. It builds hype, it has an awesome reveal, it's self-aware, it's cool, and incredibly well-paced. Woohoo! I think as a two-piece they work really well together, the stories blend very well into each other, but it is a shame that even though Rusty Davies is so well aware of this new age of digital storytelling, the direction he decided to go in does seem a lot less interesting than the fan theories he was so desperate to inspire. I don't think that's necessarily a real criticism though. We got the story we got, you know what I mean? And I think overall I like it. But now let's zoom out and let's assess the series as a whole. As you all know, I am the #1 season 1 fan. I am a lover of this series, and I can safely say that with this finale, that has not changed. I still love the opener of the season, Space Babies, The Devil's Cord. Yes, I do love Space Babies. I will explain why later. Boom, I thought was brilliant. 73 yards, one of the best episodes of the revival. Dot on Bubble was an unexpected masterpiece, and Rogue by default is my low point, and even then, it's still pretty damn good. I do find it funny though. Looking at my channel analytics, they just seem to be getting higher and higher, and then Rogue came out and boom, hype to the floor. Definite low point of the season when it comes to hype, being real. Nobody cared about it. But the series as a whole, I can safely say I did care about. It's one of the most consistent in quality I have ever seen. But I know what you're all thinking. Is it still #1? In a previous video, I said this series was a contender for me to be the #1 best series of modern Doctor Who that I had ever seen. And after that finale, I can say it just about loses to Series 5. But it's up there, it's top 3 at least. I recently rewatched The Big Bang, and that is just peak, man. Knocks this way out of the water. The Empire of Death is Rusty Davies' weakest finale, in my opinion, but it's still certainly leagues better than anything after Series 5. I say that, it's probably Series 9 finale level. That's where I'd put it. But the rest of this series is better than the rest of Series 2, most of 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and also Flux, my beloved. So yeah, probably this season is in my top 3. Maybe I'll make a video going over all of my updated thoughts, you know, just because I feel like that's a crazy thing to just throw out there with no backing. This video's long enough, folks. But anyway, I think a more pressing question to ask is, was this series a success? And I think for that, the answer is a lot more complicated. Writing wise, I think yes, this series is a success because its quality is so high. However, if you judge it in other ways, well, let's get into that. According to you guys, Space Babies was the lowest rated episode of the season, with only 7% of people voting that was amazing and 17% putting it as bad. The Devil's Cord is a drastic step up, with 37% of audiences saying it was amazing and only 10% saying it was bad. Boom jumps up even higher with a 63% amazing rating, and the lowest rating so far of 6% on bad. 73 yards is just under at 60%, and Dot on Bubble manages a respectable 31%, with a 7% on bad. Rogue scores about the same, with 32% amazing and a 9% bad. And Legend of Ruby Sunday then performs the best so far, with the lowest bad percentage of 4%, and a very respectable 59% on amazing. That actually just went down from 60% that it was on yesterday. Up to this point, every episode in the series has been relatively well received, with Space Babies being the only potential exception. That is until Empire of Death, which sits at a disappointing 14% bad and 12% amazing. Still overall positive, but the most mixed so far. Overall, it's the second least popular episode of the season after Space Babies. However, generally speaking, if you look at these polls, it is generally positive. Even the 2 weakest episodes, the first and the last, have a generally positive reception. But you have to keep in mind that this is from my community. You guys are the best community in the world, so it's kind of obvious that everyone else won't be so rational. And you can see that in the response to Space Babies, which I would still retain is the most hate I have ever seen for Doctor Who ever. It got caught in the sights of a particular brand of YouTube channel that just so happened to love hate brigading. Luckily by now these channels have long gone and have shifted to the Acolyte to hate farm off, but it's funny, you can actually tell the exact week where discourse in Doctor Who became more bearable when all these assholes fucked off. Jesus Christ, they were so disingenuous. But I think partly because of that, and partly partially because of the general reaction to Space Babies being lukewarm. The reception the series received initially was alright. Amongst fans it is well liked enough, but outside of me, and literally only me alone, I don't think this series was super well received. And this is just amongst fans. Let's see how it did in the court of the general public opinion. So here we are, back again. Time for our yearly ratings discussion. And then they just kept saying it for 10 years. And here we are now again with Doctor Who's new record low ratings, TM. And I'm back again to explain what they mean. Are they good or are they bad? Yeah, they're pretty bad, but why? Because what you will notice when it comes to this topic is that most of the time people talking about it have absolutely no fucking idea what they're talking about, because they're missing out on the context, the reasoning as to why the big number go boom and the small number go boo. British television is kind of like an ecosystem. When it's doing well, it's easy for plenty of shows to flourish. When it's doing badly, everything turns to shit. Unfortunately for all of us, it's not just British TV that's shit nowadays. In fact, the whole modern media landscape of the 2020s has been completely ass. In that any generic film pre-pandemic is now heralded as amazing because, in contrast, 90% of the big budget movies / TV shows that come out nowadays are pure shit. It just is what it is. There's been a massive crunch. End products are worse, productions are worse, everyone looks old as hell. Yeah, there have been some good movies here and there, but let's be real here, it's just not a good decade for TV and film. And what that means is that everyone loses out. Doctor Who loses out, Star Wars loses out, Marvel loses out, everything. We saw this last year with the MCU's first box office bomb in The Marvels. Compare that to Captain Marvel 1 and you can just see the difference. And you already know that there's going to be some people who are politically motivated beyond the point of reason who will offer another explanation, but the truth of the matter is, in this decade so far, everyone's losing out. And you can see that with how the numbers across the board on television have gone way down. I was talking about this last year with the 60th anniversary and how those numbers, while unimpressive in inverted commas, are pretty much what to expect from TV these days. The King's Speech, which used to get incredible numbers, actually ended up getting less than Doctor Who, which is crazy. But what you will notice is that the ratings for the current series of the show are not to this level. Not to the level of the specials. And I don't mean that just because they were specials. I mean these numbers. Well, numbers for everything are pretty bad right now, but I'm not going to sugarcoat it. These aren't what we want. These episodes aren't the most watched program of the day or the week or whenever. And it really makes you wonder, what else are people watching on telly apart from this? I saw someone say, these numbers are really underwhelming for a BBC primetime slot. And I mean, maybe, yeah, but the first thing that I thought was, what the fuck else is on at primetime? What other current British drama is airing? I can't think of fucking nothing, bruh. The conversation about ratings usually has people divide off into two camps. Those being ratings don't matter and ratings are the only thing that matters. The truth, as always, is a mixture of the two. Ratings did used to matter, but sometime in the early 2010s they started mattering not so much with the introduction of YouTube, Netflix and other video and streaming services. Now they matter a bit, but not quite as much. For a program like Doctor Who is an international IP and the only one the BBC has now after Top Gear sadly went under. There's a whole situation for another day. But Doctor Who makes buttloads of money, ludicrous amounts, more so than any other show they own, which protects it. That being said, most other television programs do still rely on viewing figures as an indicator for success, albeit the number threshold as to what determines success gets lower and lower each year. Now, it's a rarity that any program breaks any impressive figures. So now, especially on the channels like BBC 2 and BBC 3, 1 or 2 million viewers is the sign of a successful show. For example, Russell T Davies' previous show, Years and Years, was a big success, and that only got around 1 to 2 million per episode itself. So what we can see from that is that for TV shows that aren't Doctor Who, ratings matter, but not as much as they used to. And for Doctor Who, Who, ratings kinda matter, but it has that layer of protection as it is and will always be the BBC's #1 show. And that acts as like a shield. Do you see what I mean? Ratings don't matter in that to Doctor Who, the conversation is a rather irrelevant one to have. But still, in the broader context of television, lower ratings can be an indicator that the show is not doing something that it needs to be doing. Which is why I can understand the confusion. When you talk about Doctor Who, you can't really compare it to any other show. It's so different in the way that it interacts with television in general. You can't really compare it with any other show, and that's why when I see conversations about Doctor Who kind of fall into the same that conversations about other shows fall into, when they talk about, oh, it fell off at a certain point, or oh, the writers didn't really know what they were doing, or certain parts, or they should have done this, they should have done that. With a show like Doctor Who, it's so unique that you kind of can't compare it to other shows in that way. But still, with all of that said, yes, even by current TV standards, the series of Doctor Who is most certainly not performing well. I'm not afraid to admit it. It's not up to what we want to see. And the main reason is because of one big change. We reset to season 1. I told you it was gonna bite you, and look where we are now. I think now, with the benefit of hindsight, we can all 1000% agree that reverting back to season 1 was completely the wrong move here. Season 1 most certainly is not a season 1. Every single thing, from the structure of the episodes to the finale at the end to simply the style of storytelling, suits a series 14 way better. I personally knew it was over when the news outlets started calling it season 1/series 14, which is the worst of both worlds when it comes to branding. And in fact, I'm just gonna say it, this season was a branding disaster. Back in 2023, when they announced they would be resetting to season 1, I knew it was very risky business. A few months later, I uploaded a video talking about how there simply was not enough demand for a reboot at this time. The idea of a reboot is a good one to have in your back pocket. There were times, most optimally 2018, where doing the good old number reset would have potentially been to the show's benefit. But 2024, I read the room and I can safely say that now was not that time. For Rusty Davies 2, I could tell what people wanted was a series 14. And we got a series 14. And it was everything that I wanted and more. And I'm glad they didn't go the whole reset series route, because it would have been stupid. But it just makes the branding all the more incompetent to me, because you blew it. You blew it, man. You blew your load. You said season 1, episode 1, and you open yourself up to something dangerous. Because let me tell you, do you want to know the reason why these viewing figures are so depressing to look at? Do you want to know why? It's not because that they're series 14 viewing figures, but because they are season 1 viewing figures. You start this reboot of the series off to the lowest results in Doctor Who history. Do you see how that might be a bad idea? And these things snowball, man. When you have a poor reputation, no matter how good the actual show is, especially if people haven't watched it, it just gets out of control and people hate on it more and more. They pile on more and more. I should know. I made a whole damn video about it. You have to realize that in order to be successful in a market, you have to understand consumer behavior. And by that, what I mean is that you have to understand the customer. Truly understand the customer. Sometimes more than they even know themselves. And you listen. Not just to what they're saying, but to everything. Because sometimes, a lot of the time, people will say stuff that isn't exactly what they mean. You listen and you hear the actual truth of it. And that's how you cut to the core of the issue. That's how I knew people didn't want a seasonal reset. That's how I knew the seasonal reset wouldn't be successful. And that's why I thought it was such a silly decision to go through with it in the first place. You've made a mess that's way harder to clean up. Oh no, series 14 is a dud. No matter, we just move on. Oh no, season 1 is a dud. Well, that's a whole different story. It's hard to build momentum from a stalled start. Something I've noticed from my literal thousands of hours analyzing the first Rusty Davies era of the show is that its success was accumulative. In that each series built off the previous because it wasn't a sure deal that it would be coming back. And that was even with series 1 being a mega hit. I've got my old Doctor Who magazines from 2000 2006 where fans are discussing if there was going to be a series 3 or not. I mean, actually, it's quite a similar situation to where we are now. But back then, you had big moment after big moment, and it kept building and building, and it was like stacking a tower of Jenga. You had series 1, which smashed onto the scene, and then a regeneration, so another thing to boost momentum, and then David Tennant, who boosted it, and then Doomsday, which boosted it again. And by the end of series 3, that's when it finally became self-sufficient. Voyage of the Damned was the peak of the revival in terms of popularity. So for series 4, when that came in, it was basically already a massive success. It was an institution, and it got to that point from a lot of really good things happening in a row. If you have a bad start, it's simply impossible to reach those heights without starting anew. And it's annoying because you look at the series and you think, damn, this is good stuff. This is at the very least on the same level as all the other Rusty Davies series, and has many stories that I think are far better. It's certainly the most consistent of any Rusty Davies Doctor Who series. It doesn't lack in terms of quality or writing quality or anything like that whatsoever. It's all good in the episode themselves department, and honestly, if you'd gotten me in after 2022 to make a new Doctor Who and make it successful, I wouldn't have been able to produce better stories than that, because on a writing standpoint, the kid hit it out of the park. But where he fumbled was on the branding, the format, and the switch to Disney Plus. Okay, let's get pragmatic here. As always, you guys already know, I am the realest person on YouTube, and I am gonna be real. We're gonna be talking about not just why the move back to series 1 was bad on a ratings front, because who really cares about that, but I'm gonna be explaining why it was bad on an everything front. I'm gonna be brutally honest, and I'm going to lay it all out on the table. Russell T Davies was brought into the fold around, my best guess, 2020-2021 territory. The timeline is super foggy because this era of the show is needlessly secretive about everything, but Chris Chibnall stated that he didn't know that Rusty Davies was taking over as showrunner, even though it was announced before Flux aired that Rusty Davies was taking over and Power of the Doctor was a last-minute script, because in the commentary track, Chris Chibnall said his original plan was to end on the Easter special before the BBC then commissioned the centenary script. We also know that Chris Chibnall fought tooth and nail for Doctor Who to go on, so it wouldn't really make sense for forces behind the BBC to be simultaneously trying to cancel the show while reaching out to Rusty Davies. Either way, the point is, Russell T Davies was brought in with one goal in mind, and he said it himself: to make Doctor Who a worldwide sensation, to make it massive, bigger than it ever was before. And so, as that was their goal, let's look and see if they succeeded. This decision, this goal, motivated the deal with Disney, as a BBC budget simply wasn't big enough to handle how big they wanted Doctor Who to be. The deal could have been with any streaming service, but Disney offered the best deal, so they went with them. Problem numero uno. Then, due to the deal with Disney, they were contractually obliged to reset back to season 1. Problem numero dos. And to top it off, problem numero tres, they were forced to release the episodes streaming first at 8 PM in the US or midnight in the UK. And that right there are the trifecta of issues that gave this season Sutekh's gift of death, the kiss of death, because there are no problems with the content of the series, no issues with the stories, no issues with the episodes, no issues with the writing. Every single problem with the series and reason as to why it didn't succeed or live up to expectations can be traced back to those 3 decisions. Number 1, Disney's reputation is in the shitter. By far the least popular streaming service. In fact, right now, Disney are the butt of every joke on the internet. They are not a popular company, and they hold no cultural foreground. I'm just telling you straight up, people hear the words Disney Doctor Who and they're instantly put off. It's the simple truth. And sadly, no matter what you say, those first impressions, those gut feelings are super important. Disney are hot off the heels of several very unpopular decisions. I just spent a portion of this video talking about how they are responsible for probably the most hated film of all time. Whether or not that is deserved is up to you. But to put it in perspective just how much this move was a detriment to the health of the show, allow me to provide a little anecdote, a story from my life, my personal life. Well, not mine per se, but my cousins, my baby cousins. They're 10 years old, the perfect age to become a Doctor Who fan. And what do you know? Their first episode they ever saw live was The Church on Ruby Road. And they loved it. I was with them day after Christmas. They loved it. They were talking excitedly about all the mysteries, the lady at the end, the goblins were scary. They were enamored. And that was their first ever Doctor Who. Cut forward a few months, I see them again. What did they think of the new season? They hadn't seen it. They hadn't even watched, and they didn't want to. What they told me was that word on the playground is Doctor Who is terrible and has been, this is an actual quote, Disneyfied. Now, bear with me, because I might sound like a crazy person, but that word, that term, Disneyfied, and the fact that it's them especially using it is very important. Do you remember what I said about listening earlier? You hear what they say, but you need to listen to what they mean. And here, there is a very interesting underlying message. Keep in mind, these kids are kids. Not only are they the prime demographic for Doctor Who, but they also love Disney films. They don't really love Disney the company, but they love the movies, the animated films, all of that. But the cultural disdain for the brand has reached even them to the point where Disneyfied is a negative term. Keep in mind, they have no idea what that means. Someone told them, someone on the playground. That's how kids work. That's what I was when I was a kid. I said what my friends were saying. But the important thing is that that's what the friends are saying. That's what the culture's feeling. These kids, the perfect target demographic for Doctor Who, didn't watch Doctor Who because it was, in quotes, Disneyfied. That says a lot. And they're not wrong not to watch. Of course, I don't think they're wrong in any way. I don't think they're wrong in the slightest. I ain't gonna force them to watch something they don't want to watch. But another reason they ain't watched the series is, boom, number 2, the release schedule. Why? This is the dumbest move I've ever seen in anything ever. Whoever decided to come up with this, you should have been laughed out the room. I'm just saying. Okay, so let me explain in detail why this change is stupid. Number 1, we're still on BBC One. What the hell is this? So not only are you moving on to streaming first, a change which no one likes, you're also not fully moving off BBC One. Just so your numbers can be the lowest they've ever been in history. Just so your show can look bad. I said when this was announced, but it feels like intentional sabotage. In the way Michael Grade would do back in the late 80s. And I stand by it. This decision was sabotage. It does nothing but make the ratings look bad, which incentivizes haters and makes fans and the BBC themselves doubt the show. What I don't get is why they didn't just pick a lane. Either go full pelt on streaming or go full pelt on live broadcast. Don't dilly-dally. Don't tip your toe in. You gotta have faith. You gotta be confident and you've gotta be forceful. You make bold changes or you get caught in the tides. Number 2, no one likes streaming. The 2020s is the only decade where audiences will literally scream at companies that the way that they're making stuff is over expensive, inefficient, and no one likes it, and the companies will still choose to keep making it. No one likes these 8-episode streaming shows. They're not popular. People keep acting like there are a secret magical land of silent viewers who love watching them. It's not true. And number 3, you're on fucking Disney. Do you know how you maybe pull this off? How you maybe make this work? I'm gonna be so for real right now. You ditch Disney and you go with Netflix. It's a legit no-brainer. Netflix has infinitely more cultural capital right now. It's not even funny. Doctor Who had one of its biggest booms ever when it was put on Netflix, and then promptly fell out of the discourse the second it was taken off. Every single Netflix show or movie that they pump out inexplicably does incredible numbers and morphs the discourse around it for months on end. Disney Plus's biggest show this year was probably X-Men 97, which is a goddamn good show, and I hear no one talking about it. Outside of like a few people, it's like their biggest show this year, and you compare it to even like some rando Netflix show, and it's doing about the same. Netflix is so defining that in this very series of Doctor Who, we have a whole episode that is themed around Bridgerton, a Netflix TV show that is coming out at the moment. And yes, Rogue was conceptualized as a Bridgerton episode, not a Regency episode, a Bridgerton episode. Surely when you were making that episode, you have to have realized, yeah, Netflix has more going on than Disney. Imagine how big that episode could have been if it was on Netflix and not competing with Netflix. But it's not just Bridgerton. It's The Queen's Gambit, Avatar The Last Airbender, Wednesday, Dharma, Bird Box, Stranger Things, Black Mirror, Squid Games, Lupin, Ozark, You, Cobra Kai, the Harry and Meghan documentary, The Crown, Peaky Blinders, Call the Midwife, Vikings. Need I go on? Oh wait, yes I do. These are the two most important shows that Netflix has in relation to Doctor Who. Heartstopper and Sex Education. Now, I'm not the biggest fan of these shows, but let's look at this era of Doctor Who and do a little comparison here. Yeah, okay. So Ncuti Gatwa was cast as the Doctor due to the success of his character on Sex Education. Rusty Davies is very obviously and very clearly trying to tap into that same audience. That is his target demo with the 8-episode streaming service, shtick. That's who he's going for, that's what he wants. Same thing he did with It's a Sin, but it doesn't work because it's not on Netflix. You do everything here, everything. Same release date, same format, same everything. You release it on Netflix, it's 10 times bigger. I'm telling you. If you want me to fix the current Doctor Who, I wouldn't change the scripts. The scripts are perfect. I'd go back in time and I'd change that. Netflix Doctor Who, and you got yourself a hit. But it's not just that. Mistakes are like successes in that they accumulate too. And the Disney Plus sitch only got to be that big a problem in the first place because they had made a series of errors already to get up to that point. Namely, the shift in focus away from the UK as the primary audience of the show and towards the US. Because it worked so well last time, am I right? Okay, let me be clear here. The UK did not receive good marketing for this series at all. In fact, it got shit marketing. Absolutely terrible. And I think part of that, again, goes back to the formatting. The episodes release at midnight, which means technically they release on Saturday. But that means a lot of people, when it said Saturday on the poster, assumed, as you do, that it meant Saturday night. And so, on Saturday morning, when they woke up and found out the episode had already aired, well, you get the idea. The amount of comments I got every week saying, Doctor Who was on last night? I thought it was tomorrow. Was criminal. Not only that, we kept hearing it's on Disney Plus, or, well, it's on Disney Plus outside the UK, but in the UK it's blah, 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 blah. If you're not a Doctor Who fan, you hear all that shit and you tune out. If it's not simple, if it's not easy, for a lot of people, Doctor Who is not entitled for their time. It should not be a chore for them to understand when the program's on. Instead, the focus was put on American audiences, with the cast making the rounds on these insipid daytime television shows. Okay, no offense, Americans, but how the hell do you watch this stuff? I remember when there was the big press push, I was trying to force myself to watch this and Jesus Christ, it is blech. And the truth of the matter is, I was thinking the whole time, as I was watching these videos, this ain't gonna work. Because of course it isn't. The trailer had more dislikes than likes. These daytime television videos were getting 1,000 views each. There was no hype, no buzz, no sauce. And that's because they're barking up the wrong tree. It's impossible for Doctor Who to be mainstream in America. I've said this many times, but while yes, there are millions of American Doctor Who fans, they are a small percentage of the American audience. And the average American audience does not want Doctor Who. The show in its current form does not appeal to the mainstream in America. Straight up. It doesn't, and it will be met with hostility upon trying to do so, as we saw with the biggest wave of hate I have ever seen in the program's long history with the release of Space Babies. That was the Americans, swiftly providing their response to Doctor Who being shoved in their face, and it was a resounding no. For years now, I've heard the common catch-all criticism being thrown at Doctor Who and kind of basically everything, that being bad writing. I've talked about this in videos before. It's a nebulous term with no real meaning that more often than not comes down to, do I like the vibes? And in American media, that is more noticeable than ever. You have to realize that the British culture and the American culture are really quite different. And being successful in the relatively small market of Britain does not equate to success in America. We have different sensibilities, different tastes, and especially in the mainstream of America, things really do do have to be a lot more conservative. Everything in America is more extreme, down to the size of the pavements. There are many factors as to why Doctor Who wouldn't be accepted. It's British identity, the look of the main characters, their accents, the look of the show, the themes of the show, the cast of the show, pretty much everything. And I know the rebuttal I'll hear to this from American fans is, I've always loved that Doctor Who is British. It's part of its identity. That's what Americans love about it. And I would agree that most audiences would agree to that. And I'll get back to it. But the thing is here, this series of Doctor Who is a weird hybrid amalgamation, at least in the way it was marketed, of British and American, to the point where, for lack of a better metaphor, it appears that it's a British show skinwalking as an American one. And to American audiences, there is an instinctual aversion to that. It can't quite appeal to either audience, again, because it doesn't fully commit to anything it's trying to do. In America, the mainstream shows are stuff like Big Bang Theory and Young Sheldon. These are like the #1 shows on American television. These are the shows Americans like. Doctor Who cannot make it in that environment. It should not be trying to make it in that environment. Not to sound pretentious, but it is simply true. Big Bang Theory and Young Sheldon are what the mainstream, typical, average American considers good writing. And these shows could not be any more different to Doctor Who. Additionally, it's the whole thing of big fish in small pond versus small fish in big pond. In the UK, Doctor Who is a big name. It's a magical name that opens doors. In America, Doctor Who is nothing. Nobody knows what it is. It's niche, it's nerdy, it's obscure. In Britain, if Doctor Who tried, it could be the #1 show in the nation. I mean, what is beating it? There's nothing else good on. In America, the competition is stacked high to the sky. It's got to compete with all of Hollywood, man. The truth is, appealing to America has already proven not to work for Doctor Who in the past. So this is just another example of why doing it is a very silly idea. Again, not to say there aren't millions of American fans, but to succeed in the American market, you need to capture the American mainstream. And due to the cultural differences between Britain and America, it is simply impossible for Doctor Who, in its current state, to do that. What Doctor Who should have done, again, we go to Netflix, but we keep the same release schedule as we did for the 60th. 6:30 on a Saturday, BBC One, prime time, blah, 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 blah. And it goes up right after on streaming. You look on the billboards, you see the advert in Britain, and you see it say in bold font, 6:30 p.m. only on BBC One. No dilly-dally, no mixed messages, and you say it with chest. And if you want more proof as to why they should have done this, what I described is the exact same release strategy as Rusty Davies' previous series, It's a Sin, and it paid off massively there. Well, technically that was on HBO Max, but still. Of course, jokes aside, we have no idea the contents of each deal. Maybe the Disney deal was the best. In fact, I'm sure it was the best, but still something they should have accounted for is the fact that Disney has a negative reputation at the moment. But this all leaves the question, will there be a season 3? Okay, so first of all, let's answer the burning question we raised earlier. Was this series a success? Well, no. In terms of writing, I'm gonna say it again, this is some of the highest quality Doctor Who content we've had in over a decade. Truly stunning stuff. But in terms of setting out and achieving the BBC's goals for the show, no. Frankly, no. And if we're being honest here, put the program in a far worse predicament than it currently should be in. Which begs the question, will the show be renewed? Will it be cancelled? Well, no. It's gonna be fine, okay guys? It's the BBC's big dog. And the season itself was of high enough quality that anyone who even glances at it will have a hard time pretending that it's actually a bad show. Additionally, Russell T Davies at the BAFTAs said that he's got a deadline for a new Doctor Who script, and we already knew that he was writing series 3, but would you have a deadline for something that's not commissioned? I don't think so. Guys, I will be the first to admit that this series was a flop in terms of the BBC's grander plans. But I'll also be the first one to come to Doctor Who's defense and say we've still got it, baby. I don't think the show's cancelled. I don't think the show is in threat of being cancelled. I think it just goes to show just how strong a brand Doctor Who is, that it can be this resilient, as throughout the 2020s, it has just been put through the ringer, man. But no, I think it's still got some life in it. I think it's going to go on to a series 3. I think it's probably going to go on to a series 4 too. We already know series 2 is coming out. We know there's a Christmas special. I personally know they're going to be absolute bangers, so there's no fear from me. But okay, let's have a little bit of fun. How would I fix it? How would I? If the BBC came and knocking on my door, they said, DW fan 91, 91st Doctor Who fan of all time, save the show for us. It's all good me sitting here talking, yapping. What would I do if I had to fix things from this position? If I was given the same goal that Mr. T was tasked with in 2021. Okay, I do love a little creative exercise. As you guys all know, I am a writer at heart. I have over a couple dozen scripts hidden away in the vault, fully completed Doctor Who scripts. I'm being so for real, at least one for each Doctor. I probably have several hundred that are incomplete or partially finished, but they don't count. And if you're not counting the ones that aren't related to Doctor Who, oh my god, I have so many. One day I will tell you all the story of 1985, but now I'm gonna flex my skills. I'm gonna show you what you can achieve with 91 years of accumulated experience. Now I'm gonna drop some heat on how to accomplish every single one of the goals that those heads of the BBC approached Mr. T and asked him to do. Let's set the scene. 2028. Season 4 is coming out. Russell T Davies is leaving after his second tenure, and behind the scenes, moi, I'm approached. That's French for me. Number 1, the Disney deal is over. The deal's off. Disney Doctor Who is done, and we are taken back to the paltry BBC budget. What this means, more than likely, as seen by the Chibnall era, we can probably keep the show looking good, but at the expense of a real long gap between seasons. A lot of the budget from the Disney deal goes into making the gaps between seasons a lot shorter, cutting down the post-production, making everything smoother behind the scenes. We go smaller, we downsize, we lose some of that. So what do? We have to make up for it. We change the format. We change the format, not just for the sake of storytelling, but to make it so that even after multiple year-long breaks, Doctor Who can still build momentum. And what do I mean by this? What am I proposing? Well, what I mean is the same thing I've been saying for decades now. We abandon the 45-minute format and we return to the 20-minute format. Hear me out. Let me cook. We have 20 episodes per season, 20 minutes long. 4 parts per story, 5 stories per season. And 2 episodes per week. 1 on Tuesday, 1 on Saturday, 5:30 p.m. Okay, let me explain myself, because this is a massive change. You guys know that for years now I have been campaigning that the biggest flaw in modern Doctor Who has been the 45-minute format. It is the enemy of the program. So many stories feel rushed, not fleshed out fully, poorly structured, and it's all down to the 45 minutes. Yes, sometimes it hits out of the park and it works perfectly. 90% of the time, doesn't work as much as it should do. It leaves stories feeling empty and not fully fleshed out. Again, sometimes it works, but in general, it allows for better storytelling if we switch back to the 20-minute format. For example, chew on this. The finale, the latest episodes. You split this up into a 4-parter, oh my god, it's so much better. Even all of the beats are there. The Devil's Chord, Maestro shows up exactly halfway through the episode. It's perfect, with a bit of jiggling around for a part 1 cliffhanger. A lot of people recently have been saying they miss the downtime, the goofing off in the TARDIS, the little scenes, and while yes, part of that is the cut down to 8 episodes, with a 20-minute format, it allows for more of that. What I think a lot of people need to realize is that with the 20-minute episode format, it isn't the 45-minute stories cut in 2. Please, if you take one thing away from this video, please let it be that. The whole formation of the script is entirely different and easier, might I add. It's so much easier. Trust me, man, it is so much easier. The format lends itself to Doctor Who perfectly, and why wouldn't it? It worked for 26 years. Additionally, what we have to look at now when it comes to Doctor Who is the issue of legacy. Doctor Who, in its current form, has been around for a long time. 19 years to be exact, and it has gotten to the point, as it naturally does, that every single thing this new series does is compared to the past. And there's always going to be a group of people who say it's not as good. It's never as good. It could never be as good. And how do you counter that? I'll tell you how. You make it impossible to compare the two. This new Doctor Who, in this new format, is incomparable to episodes like Midnight, or Heaven Sent, or Blink. because it's totally different. The structure of stories is different. The tone is different. It's completely different. And so, fittingly, this time, as we have a new format, a new formula, a new showrunner, a new doctor, now, we make the decision to go back to series 1. Yep, if I was taking over a series 19 or a series 20, I wouldn't make this decision. But if I'm taking over a series 5 on a show where the momentum just ain't there, you're gonna miss me with that shit, bruh. I'm gonna revert to season 1, except I'm gonna be smart this time. What do? I give it a new name. I call it Doctor Who Part 3. Right there, look at it. Retroactively, we divide past Doctor Who into parts 1, 2, and 3. And this will be part 3. And it's a whole new era. Do you see what I'm doing? I'm not treating the audience like they're slow, but also I am actually making a commitment to a new era, a new reset. There is a time jump between series. In a way, I'm harkening back to shows like Star Trek and how each of those series have individual taglines. With this though, a tagline would be restrictive, corny, maybe even a bit cheesy, but part 3 is simple, whilst paying homage and also, you know, if you want to play into that Redditor, kind of cringy, but just typical internet behavior, it also incentivizes those types of people who say stuff like, oh, skip part 2, skip part 2. Kind of like those people with JoJo's. Speaking of which, we have the 20-minute format. What does that tie really well into? You guessed it, the binge model. Pioneered by anime shows like Attack on Titan, Jujutsu Kaisen, we're going for that. And what I mean is, those shows are cultural products of Japan, inherently Japanese and not trying to be anything else. And yet, they are beloved worldwide. We do the same for Doctor Who. We pivot it as a cultural product of the UK, but beloved by everyone. You see how we, you know, switch up these things? And people say the 20-minute format doesn't work. They say people won't react to the cliffhangers the same way. Do you know how we're trying to grip people? We're trying to grip them like this.
Oh God!
We want a show that's bingeable, addicting, but also one you watch week by week and makes you go crazy every time by the end. You have 2 episodes a week. What is that? 3 to 4 day gap between each episode? Not including the finale. That's 19 what the fuck moments per season. Every cliffhanger should be huge. Every cliffhanger should be massive. And what that does is create 19 spikes in social media engagement across 10 weeks of airtime. We're trending twice a week, folks. Even if the focus is just on the UK market, that's bound to cause a stir. You see, audiences respond well to stuff if they think they're not the target. Might sound like an oxymoron, but it's true. If something is far away, it has a sort of enigma around it that makes it intriguing. So, you release Doctor Who in the UK, you release it next day on Max or Netflix, or hell, even just whatever BBC America substitute there is now. If it's good, if it's crazy, if it's popular here, people will notice overseas. You will see natural growth worldwide until it is that international empire that the BBC want it to be. We're in an online age. People will see. Across the world. We don't need to try hard. Big fish, small pond. You captivate the UK market, it's the biggest show in the country. That has its appeal. So much more than it being ranked 16th on Disney Plus worldwide or whatever. Being number 1 in a niche is so much more impressive than just being above average. You see this on YouTube too. People who get big in communities are people who are specialized, who are great at just one thing. People love to see a master at their craft. Here's a good example. Remember Fortnite? Remember Myth and Ninja? These guys were fucking massive. They were titans. And why? Because they were seen as masters of their craft, as the best at the game. There was discussion around them, totally naturally generated discussion. Who was the best? Who would win in a 1v1? Then competition began to rise and they eventually got flushed out. After they weren't number 1 at the game anymore, yeah, their streams were better in terms of technical quality, but people were watching for the skill. They were watching to say this person was number 1. And this principle applies to basically everything. If you are number 1 at something, people are going to pay attention. It's a good story, it's a good good headline, especially when it's niche. It's underrated. You make a series of Doctor Who, it's a mega hit in the UK, addicting as hell, 20 episodes, banger after banger, and it takes the country by storm. You see a clip on Reddit or TikTok or YouTube Shorts that shows like an edit of the show or a moment of the show. People get curious, they ask in the comments, what is that? Then they get answered. It's the #1 show in the UK right now. Doctor Who just got a massive reboot. It's really good. And then, naturally, without even having to force it, you got a worldwide sensation. And keep in mind here, this is all just the thought I'm putting into the format. All of that justification that I just gave is done after years of research on what pops off seemingly inexplicably on the internet, what goes viral, all to prove that if you just let me save you. Doctor Who Part 3 Series 1. 20 episodes, 5 stories, 4 parts each. 2 a week, Tuesdays and Saturdays. It'll work. And that's not even talking about the potential storylines. I already got all the scripts written up here. Call me back, BBC. Hashtag DWFan91 for showrunner. That's a wrap. I take my bow. That's how you do it. Do you think I went on enough tangents? I told you I had a lot of thoughts. And oh brother, do I still have more. In short, to summarize, I think The Empire of Death was a good finale episode. It had some parts that I wasn't massive on. Still overall, very good. Shame that some scenes were cut. That could have made it even better. I admire Rusty Davies for having the balls to do that twist. I think the twist itself is fine, but its execution could have been handled a bit better if implemented better into the episode as a whole. The series in general is goddamn brilliant. Still one of my favorites, maybe second or third of the revival, and I think the consistency and quality was very high. The 2 stars were breathtaking, some of the stories rivaled the revival's greatest, and even at its lowest, it's still better than some series peaks. The handling of the formatting was piss poor and almost unforgivable. Reverting to series 1 was bad enough, but coupled with all of the various other poor decisions, it was begging for failure. Disney did more harm than good. And bring back the 20-minute episode format, goddammit. Okay, I think that's everything. Now on to what you guys have been saying. Do you think that intro was long enough? So let's dive right into the comments. Let's see what everyone is saying. This one from Renadum. Sutek just staring at Captain Jack hanging onto the outside of the TARDIS is really funny to me. Same, buddy. The idea that Sutek has been on the TARDIS since the Pyramids of Mars, on the face of it, just makes no sense. That's not me saying that it's bad, by the way. I think it's pretty damn cool, but you just gotta turn your brain off. Realistically speaking, if we're looking at all of the stuff that has happened to the TARDIS in the, 30, 40 years since that episode has come out, realistically speaking, there should be no fucking way that Sutek was on it the whole time. With that said, you kind of just have to run with it, you know what I mean? It's just something that happened now, and you know, it is funny. I've seen those images, you know, Sutek chilling on the TARDIS. So overall, while yes, it makes no sense, I think it's cool because it's funny. Sinom says, honestly, this whole 2-parter didn't make much sense. It's kind of just a typical Rusty Davies finale. Let's pretend we have huge stakes while we know everything just gets turned back at the end with no consequence. Yeah, pretty much. As you can see, a lot of people agreed with this comment. I kind of agree with it too, to be honest. Yes, there is no real need for Sutek to set a trap. Yes, the whole Susan Triad thing isn't necessarily necessary at all for the story. Sutek could have just killed everyone and then instantly won. But then again, as this person says, that's pretty much what happens in all the Rusty Davies finales. Apart from the series 1 finale, which is actually meticulously thought out and makes perfect sense. For Doomsday and Last of the Time Lords, especially Journey's End, you kind of just have to let it happen. You can't really scrutinize it. You gotta kind of turn your brain off, not pay much attention, because otherwise, logically speaking, it all completely falls apart. And then with the End of Time, I feel like it's impossible. With that one, there's just no hope. It just straight up, from the moment go, completely falls apart. So at least it's better than that one. Robbie Martin says, Sutek casually burning in the sun during the Big Bang. Also, I like the idea of him and House chilling during The Doctor's Wife. Yeah, this is more of what I was just saying. You know, I recently rewatched The Doctor's Wife, and I have interesting thoughts on this episode, because I was thinking, I was rewatching my old video where I ranked all of Doctor Who, and I put this episode in A tier. And I still think this episode is, you know, an A tier, B tier episode, which is very high on my rankings, by the way. That's way above average. But at the same time, with The Doctor's Wife, I don't really like the episode. Does that make sense? Like, I can see that it's a really good episode, and there are parts of it that I think are really goddamn cool and really good. But when I watch it, and when I watched it recently, about 12 days ago, I just didn't like the episode. I love House. I think he's really goddamn cool. I love the idea of the trap leading him in, the whole pocket universe, the Ood, all of that looks so cool. I just don't really like Idris, and Idris is the main core part of the whole episode, and I think that falls flat because I think it's frankly just a little bit immature, which is a shame because conceptually it's all really good and sound, and the execution is absolutely incredible. What a wonderfully directed episode, and the performances from everyone are just incredible. But at the same time, I don't know, I just don't really like it. Maybe I'll talk about it more in an upcoming video / review / tier list / etc. I don't really know what I'm doing, guys. Skeletons5319 says, sadly the season didn't end with Santa crashing through the wall with a big Doctor Who will be back on Christmas in classic RTD fashion. Yeah, that would have been great, man. I do wish I'd released a trailer, or at least a teaser. Come on, man. We know it's all filmed. Frightening Volleyball says, a messy second part to an incredible first part of a finale. We are so back! Yep, we are so home. It feels like this has been the case for every goddamn series since Series 6. I remember people somehow really loved Dark Water and then were let down by Death in Heaven. Both of them are pretty mid, guys. And then Series 9. I understand everyone loved Heaven Sent. I love Heaven Sent too. That's another episode I rewatched recently and I really enjoyed. But then somehow everyone hated Hellbent. I think I view Hellbent the same way that I view this finale that just went past, in that I think, yeah, it has a few parts which don't really work and don't make sense, but core-wise it's still a really good episode. In fact, I would probably say I prefer Hellbent to this episode that just went past. And then with Series 10, thankfully now people don't really hold the belief that the Doctor Fools is that bad, but I remember when it came out people were let down by the Doctor Fools and they said World Enough Time was way better and the Doctor Fools wasn't that good. I completely disagree. I've always preferred the Doctor Fools to World Enough in Time. And then with the Series 12 finale, of course, that was a whole other can of worms, but I remember people did enjoy Haunting of Villa Diodati and Ascension of the Cybermen. I did too. Personally, I think The Timeless Children is also a good episode, in the same way that Empire of Death is a good episode. It has bad bits, it has bits that don't make sense. It's still a goddamn good episode though. In fact, I would also say that The Timeless Children is probably better than this finale, The Empire of Death. But that's because people just don't realize any of the stuff that actually happens in The Timeless Children because they haven't watched it. They've just heard other people talk about it poorly. It's actually a really entertaining episode of Doctor Who with some really cool moments in it. But anyway, the whole part 1 being really good, part 2 being a massive letdown is not a new thing in the Doctor Who fandom. We've been viewing it for over 10 years now, and I personally have always been willing to give the part 2s a shot. In fact, I usually like part 2s more than most anyway. I'm rather consistent on that front. I liked Empire of Death, guys, sue me. So Gerald Nosehairs says, it was kind of a traditional RTD two-parter. There's that idea again. He introduces a MacGuffin in the final episode that defeats the villain. Everything goes back to normal. Any finale set on Earth can be guaranteed to have no real consequences. Pretty much. Yeah, it is a very standard Rusty Davies finale, which kind of leads me to think, well, it's not really offensively terrible or anything. It's just more of what we've had before. And personally, with me, with where I'm at with Doctor Who, I'm kind of fine with getting stuff that we've had before. Is that just me? I was on record saying that I wanted a Series 14 over a Series 1. I personally think that we definitely got a Series 14 over a Series 1. So I am really satisfied. I am fine with Rusty Davies coming back and kind of doing things in the same style that he did before. Yes, he has a different approach to it, and yes, the outcome, the final product is different to his original era. The methodology behind it all is still the same, and I'm perfectly fine with that. I've said before, you know, it'd be great to get new writers in, you should get me in. But also at the same time, I perfectly understand why Rusty Davies came back, and I think, you know, he is back. It is what it is. I'm just gonna enjoy what he's doing because I enjoyed it before and I enjoy it now. Why not? I think this is the difference between me and a lot of Doctor Who audiences, in that I'm willing to meet it halfway. Sometimes not every episode will do exactly everything that I want it to do, but when I was a kid who watched Doctor Who, it was the exact same way. A lot of episodes didn't really do everything and they didn't make perfect sense even to me as a kid, but what I did was I kind of filled in the blanks for myself. Or, you know, this is how you are when you're a kid. You sometimes assume, oh, maybe I just don't get it. When you're a kid, you don't really understand what anyone is saying, so even if you do catch an inconsistency or whatever, or something that seems weird, or a reaction that doesn't really make a lot of sense, you kind of explain it internally in your head by saying, well, I'm a kid, I just don't really get it. And you're willing to kind of gloss over the minor problems in favor of of the overall finished product and overall enjoyment of the story. And I try and preserve that in my adult self as well, because it just leads to more enjoyment. I like to preserve that childish sense of wonder when it comes to Doctor Who. And I also like to meet episodes halfway, where if there are small problems that don't really make much sense or whatever, I can kind of gloss over them. Who knows though? That's just how I experience stuff. You guys know I'm the realest person on YouTube. I try and be as consistent as possible when it comes to rating and reviewing and assessing, analyzing, etc. Add another synonym in there for these types of things. And here's another comment from Uncle Carl 5219, who says there isn't a single Doctor Who finale that hasn't reset the status quo by the end of the comment just ends there. I assume he means end of the episode. I'm sure there has been one. Name of the Doctor? Nope, that also features something being undone. Series 8? Well, no, that just ends with all of them flying up into the clouds. That episode's just fucking garbage, bro. Series 9? No, the Doctor gets his memory erased. I mean, all of those events still happen. It's only in Twice Upon a Time that Hellbent is retroactively undone for some reason. What is this guy doing? Last 5 minutes of his era, he's like, you know what? I'm just gonna undo this incredible emotional arc that I did last year. I'm hating. That scene where Clara shows up does work. Kinda. I don't know. Personally, I feel like he should have stayed confident with it. I think that storyline of the Doctor and Clara and the Doctor forgetting Clara worked really well. So I think just undoing it, especially in such an anticlimactic way, did kind of fall flat. But that's just me. Twice Upon a Time is another episode I dislike, especially I think the gesture of the Doctor Falls being such a perfect end to the Peter Capaldi's 12th Doctor, and then he gets elongated due to external factors. And his final episode is now, instead of it being an epic climax, it is a whimper, a filler episode where nothing happens. That being said, I do like the scene where the Doctor, you know, hugs Bill and Nardo. That's the highlight of the episode. Rest of it is trash! But anyway, I think Uncle Carl is correct in that I think every single episode has reset the status quo, apart from the Timeless Children. That's the only one. Next comment, Sleepy Bunny says, I like the idea of Ruby's mum being a normal person who just happens to be surrounded by mystery boxes, but then the actual explanation for half the mysteries turned out to be nothing. What the fuck? I think a lot of people are in the same boat, in that the people who I watched this episode with second time round, because you know, I rewatch these things, they said that they were fine with Ruby's mum being no one. And I am too, actually. I don't really have a problem with that. It's more so that they set up so many mystery boxes and they expect you to still be invested even when they say, oh, but this person's nothing. And especially when they dedicate so much time to it. And I think them cutting that scene where the snow falls in the cafe at the end really is a detriment to the episode, because I think that would keep the questions alive, because at least they wouldn't think that the creators forgot about it, because the creators obviously didn't forget about it. And I think that that would have been truly impactful. I know they said, oh, it looked bad. Bro, the Mrs. Flood ending scene looked bad too. You didn't cut that shit. I want them to re-edit the episode and include all the shit that they cut. Seriously, I'm genuine here. All of the stuff that they cut sounded good as fuck. Russell T Davies, what were you doing? The snow, the Doctor saying I love you, and then this one, for me, is the most unforgivable. The Doctor has his whistle, right, which I thought was really cool. I love that the TARDIS kind of flies to him. It shows, you know, the TARDIS is the loyalty, autonomy as a character. I thought that was really cool, especially because it felt so awful to see, you know, Sutek holding the TARDIS. So the TARDIS fights back, flies away, the Doctor whistles to reactivate. I thought that was a really cool sequence. You guys know I was perfectly fine with the magic rope because it had already been set up. It's just one of those things where, for me, if an idea is very easy to grasp very quickly, then I think it's fair game. It shows the skill of a writer to be able to easily show their ideas very quickly in a way that can be picked up by everyone. But anyway, the whistle, for me, it just falls out of the memory TARDIS. And then, apparently, in a cut scene, the Doctor was meant to drop the whistle back through the TARDIS and back to his past self, which makes perfect sense, by the way, because it's a memory TARDIS, which is compiled of items from adventures both past and future of the Doctor. So that makes perfect sense. And it ties the whole episode together in a bow. Why the hell did they cut it? It makes absolute perfect sense. It would have been a really cool moment, and it further explains the story and justifies Sutek's defeat. I love shit like that, man. And now in the actual episode, the Doctor's whistle just disappears for no goddamn reason. Rusty Davies' explanation was, oh, it disrupted the flow of the chase. Do you know what actually disrupts the flow of the chase? The Doctor and Ruby stopping while Sutek is still outside to look at a bunch of planets and say, oh my god, guys, the Ood Sphere Aqua Centauri is back. Thank god, guys. And then the Doctor's like, I must defeat Sutek. He's crying over Sutek. Sutek killed trillions of people, bruh. Also, in Pyramids of Mars, the Doctor didn't seem to care about Sutek dying whatsoever. To be fair though, you know, we talk so much about Pyramids of Mars, we include that so much in the episode. Technically speaking, Ross Davies is completely ignoring the whole episode. A lot of people saying, oh, you've got to watch Pyramids of Mars to understand this episode. I think it works better if you haven't watched Pyramids of Mars, because you're not constantly thinking to yourself, hang on a second, that's not how that worked. For one, Sutek being an Osiran, Ross Davies calls it an Assyrian. I'd never heard it before. I searched it up. Apparently, you can call them that.
Sutek actually wasn't a god of death in the past. He was an Assyrian.
This guy one-upping me in nerd points. But they never once mentioned that Sutek is an Osiran. I never expected them to. They've kind of retconned a bunch of characters into this pantheon of gods that never existed before. The Mara is one who they just threw in there. It kind of feels a bit of a shame that all these disconnected, really awesome Doctor Who concepts are all being squished together, smashed into one. I suppose as long as they don't over-explain it, it's still cool and mystical and mythical. Sutek was never a god of death. They kind of just put that in there. It works fine. And the main unforgivable one, this was pointed out by another sci-fi guy on YouTube. He pointed out to me, he said, Sutek wasn't sent through the time vortex. He was sent through a time corridor. So it doesn't make sense for him to be able to attach to the TARDIS because he wasn't in the time vortex. It's a totally separate thing. I'd never noticed that before. I don't think Ross T. Davies noticed that either. To be fair, it doesn't really matter. But still, it's another one of those things where if you haven't watched Pyramids of Mars, Empire of Death is probably a more enjoyable watch. Anyway, what was I talking about? Oh yeah, the cut scenes. And they cut the scene where the memory TARDIS fell apart. That's a kind of important thing. I kind of wish that I never listened to that commentary track because Rusty Davies, this guy was teasing stuff that's never gonna come out. He was like, oh, there was this really awesome action set piece with these zombie civil servants. I'm like, imagine that shit in my mind. I'm like, oh my God, that sounds so fucking cool. What do we get instead? Walking around. He's like, you know, but it's a bit more atmospheric like this. What fucking cope. He knows it would have been cooler if there were zombie civil servants. That's like the coolest idea I've ever heard. It's Phil Collinson, the producer, on his shoulder saying, oh, it's more atmospheric this way. Not that we can't afford it. Anyway, my overall point is all of the stuff that they cut from Empire of Death made it worse, and they should have included all of that in and cut out some of the mum stuff. I liked how Ruby's mystery wasn't supernatural or cosmically special. It was just so simple, realistic, and fresh. Not every companion has to be an impossible girl, a bad wolf, or the mother of the Doctor's wife. To me, the highlight of the series definitely was Millie's Ruby. It's now in my top 5 companions of all time. She's not in my top 5, but she is still definitely really good. I would say the highlight of the series for me isn't just Ruby specifically, it's Ruby and the 15th Doctor together. I think are really, really cool. Yes, I love when they were split apart in 73 Yards as my favorite part of the series, but also I just love all of their interactions in all of the other episodes. And I think actually with Rogue, part of my problem with that episode is that, you know, my 2 favorite characters are split apart for most of it. Luckily, they both had a lot to do and were both really cool. But still, I think the thing about Clara's Impossible Girl arc, something which is weird about it is that in a way it's the same as this, because the Impossible Girl arc, well, the reveal, spoiler alert if somehow you haven't watched it, the reveal is that Clara actually isn't special whatsoever, and that the reason she was split apart and all that wasn't because she was actually special, but because later on she just went into the Doctor's time stream, and the thing that was special about her was her bravery to go in, and she wasn't born special. There was nothing special about her birth. There was the whole Rings of Akaton is talking about fate and that leaf thing, all of the themes there. The themes of the Impossible Girl and the themes of this arc are basically exactly the same. The difference is that the resolution to the Impossible Girl is a lot more epic, whereas this one is a lot more low-key. However, I would say that everything else in execution about the Impossible Girl and this Ruby's mum arc is so much better in the Ruby front, because the Impossible Girl arc is one of just the lamest and poorly constructed mystery boxes I've ever seen in Doctor Who. So there was just absolutely no momentum whatsoever, and the resolution of the Impossible Girl arc was pretty lame as well. But yeah, I understand how people can really like this Ruby mystery reveal. I can also understand how people really hate it. I think the concept itself is fine. I think the execution was just a little fumbled. Doesn't make the episode bad. I just think that particular part of the episode could have been done better. Martin Tuma says, I loved the finale. Ruby's mum being an ordinary person would have fallen flat for me if it weren't for the scene where the two meet. The way it was acted and written perfectly justified the whole thing for me. Emotional impact will always be more important for me than some fan servicey conclusion that could have happened with literally any of the, oh, it's blank characters. Yeah, completely agree. I don't think a lot of people will agree with that though. I don't know. But Martin, don't worry, I got your back, brother. Cameron says hello to the girls in front of me at Odeon who connected with me over Eat My Salad Guy from Woman Who Fell to Earth and then said they were going home to watch Doctor Who Fan 921 after the episode. Let's fucking go, guys. If any of you are watching this video, massive fucking shout out. You guys are the real ones. Xempty says, I thought it had its moments. The beginning was fun, Sutek's voice was fantastic, and his lines were epic. And Shooting Out was absolutely excellent, and Millie was brilliant. I also love Bonnie being key to the episode as Mel, but the actual episode was a major disappointment. It was often nonsensical. Sutek's defeat is one of the worst ways a villain has ever been defeated on the show in recent years, and we've had some pretty bad solutions. Everything is fixed with a complete lack of explanation. The whole bringing life in the vortex thing makes zero sense. Let's not kill ourselves. I mean, yeah, it doesn't make any sense, but who cares? I think it makes sense in a kind of, if you don't think about it, it makes sense kind of way. You know what I mean? You're right though, it doesn't make sense. None of Doctor Who makes sense. Whatever, I'll move on. I don't mind the idea of Ruby's mother just being a random person, but the story also falls apart here. I don't understand how Sutek can't figure it out just because they view her as important. What, she's really important to the Doctor and Ruby, so Sutek can't figure her out? That makes no sense. Lol. Ruby's mother pointing to the sign at Ruby Road is also one of the most laughably bad things I've ever seen, and I was cringing in embarrassment while watching it. Are you seriously telling me that not only was this mystery, which I was more invested in than to who Ruby's mother actually was her naming her child? She named her child by pointing at a sign. Who did she think was gonna listen to that? How would anyone even know? Did she expect the man in the blue box to run to the church and tell them that the baby's name is Ruby because the woman pointed at a sign? I think Rusty Davies is possibly using the whole thing about Ruby's mum as some sort of meta commentary about the community caring so much about these mysteries. Same way he did with Susan Triad, but it just feels like he's laughing at us. See, I would be perfectly down with the meta reading of I'm criticizing why people care so much about the show. The problem is that as a creator, you kind of want people to care about the show, because if your goal is to make people wonder, why do I care so much about a TV show? And then the audience actually, you know, comes to the conclusion, you know what, it doesn't really matter. And then they stop watching. The only person who loses is you, the creator. So I would hope Russell T Davies wouldn't be so short-sighted to make a story that was meant to be like that, because that's just fucking stupid. Anyway, I'm glad some people enjoyed it, and I love part 1, and I've enjoyed other episodes of the season, but I want to be honest about how I feel about this episode. I seriously think it's an utter disaster of a finale that clearly wasn't well thought out in the slightest. I'd take most Chibnall finales over this. I feel like I didn't watch the same episode as a lot of people, and I'm seriously shocked people are just ignoring the million plot holes in this episode. I see this episode being looked back on fondly in the future. Oh, I don't see the... Yeah, I was about to say. Anyway, you say that you look around and you see a lot of people saying the opposite of what you're saying. I'm gonna say right now that I think most people agree with you. I say a lot in my videos that these community reactions are meant to be a snapshot of the community's thoughts at the exact moment of them being made, so that you can look back in the future and you can see what did the community think of the episode at the time of it being released. And I think this comment actually perfectly sums up most people's thoughts on the episode. So I've read hundreds, maybe even thousands of comments. I've watched, not hundreds, I've watched dozens of videos reviewing, talking about their thoughts on the finale, and I would say this comment summarizes the main takeaway that most people have. So for future reference, if you ever wonder what most people thought about the finale, it was this. However, with that said, you know, there was still a considerable number of the audience who were fine with the twist, who said that they liked the episode, who resonated with what Rusty Davies was trying to say, as I've shown through this video. Because it's not like I'm hand-picking comments most of the time. Sometimes I hand-pick them because I'm like, I really want to talk about this comment, but most of the time these are just like the top comments or the ones that have showed up in my notifications last. So this is just the raw community reaction. I don't even read most of these comments before I sit down to record. Sometimes I do, but you'll be able to tell if I had, because I would already come in by saying my counter argument or agreeance or whatever. I'm just waffling now. What I'm trying to say is, Xempty, don't worry buddy, most people agree with you. Bad Kitty says, I really was sad they didn't do more with Sutek or his defeat. Just felt like a cheap solution to have him cancel himself out. Fair. Okay, so first time I watched it, I had the same reaction as seemingly most people here. Oh my fucking god, the big reveal is that it's just a random person. Seriously? And how they brought everyone back to life didn't make much sense. I have to admit that too. But upon watching it for the second time, I felt like that's maybe the entire point, that we were waiting for the reveal that the mother was someone special, someone magical, someone divine on the same level as Sutek, and this reveal was going to be the huge twist that saves the day. And this ending says, that thing that has just as much power as the god of death, the thing that has enough power to stand against pure destruction itself, is the human connection, memories, and love. Is it cheesy? Yes. Do I personally find it a fitting ending? Yes. Not even the first time in this season. The Devil's Chord was about how important such an abstract thing as music can be to humans, and boom, also ended with familial love being the final solution. So I guess I'm an Empire of Death defender now, and this power of love saves the day type ending done right, in my opinion. I kind of agree with you in what you say. I think you're right, but also specifically in that when you watch it a second time and on rewatch, that's when this episode really starts to grow on you. If you go into this episode with low expectations, you're going to be blown away because there is so much good stuff in there that if you honestly expect the episode to be bad and you go in, obviously if you're not biased beyond comprehension, which, you know, a certain segment of the audience are, but if you genuinely, you're just a regular watcher and you've heard nothing but bad things and you go into it with an open mind, you're going to be shocked and you're going to be like, yeah, that was way better than I thought it was going to be. In a similar vein, when you rewatch the episode and you already know everything that's coming, you're able to enjoy it a lot more because there's a lot to love, and I do think thematically it all works. I've seen a lot of people saying, oh, but what if you change the reveal to this? What if you change the reveal to that? I think when it comes to stories like this, you can't really change the reveal without changing the whole formation, the whole structure of the story and how it was formed from the ground up. Because thematically speaking, stories aren't the same if you change a whole big reveal in them. And the way stories come to be in a writer's head just simply can't be the same if you change such a core part of it, that being a reveal. I remember when I did my rewrite, my fan rewrite of Revolution of the Daleks, which came from a pure place of love. I rewrote that episode from a slightly different perspective. I remember a lot of people saying, oh, can you rewrite the Timeless Children? And I instinctively was like, no, because I can't rewrite a story that's so personal to Chris Chibnall. I would not want to undo his twist because you can't undo something so core to the story, because if you change that reveal, even if it's to the master, which I do think would be a much cooler and better reveal, it would change just how the whole story would have to be told, so much so that it would just be a totally different episode, completely unrecognizable. And also, I think The Timeless Children is an episode that only Chris Chibnall could write, in the same way that certain Stephen Moffat episodes are episodes that only Stephen Moffat could write, because the story is so clear in their head and their head alone. Did I get off track? What I'm trying to say is Empire of Death, good. Rewatch the episode, guys, you might have some fun. Quality says, I'm largely convinced Russell either wrote this finale on a time crunch or just gave up. I think he was on a massive time crunch. Just before we talk about the rest of your comment, the decision alone to have Lenny Rush featured in the episode prominently because he was included in Space Babies meant that this episode was written after Space Babies was, well, probably not complete, it was probably in post-production, but that means that he hadn't written the conclusion by the time that the series had started, which means he was likely on a very big time crunch. You have to remember that when he casts these people, the scripts aren't even written. Susan Twist was cast before the script was written. Now, of course, Rusty Davies had these ideas in his head probably for years before you ever put pen to paper. But I do think that the time crunch aspect of the episode is very clear to notice even before you go behind the scenes and you find out all this stuff. As I said in my initial review, I just don't think that this final episode is up to the same standard quality-wise as the rest of the season. Now, that's not to say it's my least favorite episode of the season. I still think it's a good episode, but the rest is just really super well polished. It's gone through so many iterations. It's clearly had all of the time to develop further. I doubt that if you gave Rogue an extra week or so to be written, that it will come out massively differently, because it already feels like it's gone through so many iterations, so much thought has been put into it. I imagine Empire of Death, you just give them an extra week. You can write a lot in a week. I think the episode might be totally different because there just wasn't that time beforehand to fully refine it into as good as it could be. Again, that's not to say that it's bad, but it's just one of those things. You can tell sometimes when a script is written really rapidly, really rushed, and sometimes when it's given the perfect amount of time to blossom, to bloom. Again, that doesn't really directly equate / correlate to quality. Anyway, what was this guy saying? The season was going so strong, but really started filtering at Legend of Ruby Sunday. That episode and this one had a lot of moments that made me smile, but a lot of random parts that also just had me questioning why. The script for both felt like a first draft that could have been tightened up so much better with time. It just feels like these episodes spend so much time meandering on random plot points instead of giving us more time with the characters, which is all the more vital in a season with only 8 episodes. The Doctor and Ruby have great chemistry, but I feel we don't have enough enough about the relationship. 3 of the episodes of this season were Doctor Light, Companion Light, and both. Those episodes were undeniably great. It's just what's the point of having them there if they aren't going to prop up anything greater? Sutek's build-up was great, but was completely squandered in this episode and leaves too many questions. How did he birth the Pantheon and evolve into godhood while it's still attached to the TARDIS? Why did the dust leave survivors throughout the universe, to name a couple? Let me answer them for you. It's clearly travelling through the vortex on the back of the TARDIS that causes Sutek to evolve. If you just ignore the fact that he was already in his evolved state when he looked onto it, sure, yeah, just ignore that. And I imagine the death wave is kind of analogous to the flux in that it leaves survivors and then it comes in waves. In fact, I think it's literally the exact same as the flux. You know, it's funny. I always assumed in the 2005 series 1, when the 9th Doctor talks about all the Time Lords being dead, I always assumed that there was a similar death wave for all of the other Time Lords throughout the universe and throughout time, and that's why he knew for sure that he was the last of the Time Lords, not only just because he would sense it psychically, he also pushed a button. I didn't imagine it as it being a button that was pushed until Day of the Doctor came out, but I imagine he'd used a weapon somehow that sent a death wave out through the whole universe and killed all of the Time Lords and all of the Daleks, and that's how he knew for certain that none of them survived. Then we later know in Day of the Doctor this was retconned so that the Doctor just destroyed Gallifrey, and somehow every single Time Lord in the whole universe, keep in mind they can travel throughout all of time and they're fighting in a time war, but all of them are on Gallifrey at the exact same time. Are you kidding? Some dumbass shit. And I think that was the first in a very long line of inconsistencies towards Gallifrey and the whole last of the Time Lord things that just leave me kind of not caring now. If anything, I think Chibnall destroying Gallifrey again was kind of good, because at least we know where we stand now. I had no real idea what the hell was going on with Gallifrey after Day of the Doctor, what the hell was going on with the last of the Time Lords thing after Day of the Doctor. I still don't really know what's going on with that. Destroying Gallifrey, I mean, it's not the most clean solution, but it was clearly a band-aid. It was probably because Chibnall wanted, for his storyline that he had envisioned, needed Gallifrey to be destroyed. And then Stephen Moffat undid it, so he's like, well, I'll just undo his undoing of it. I mean, it's not really the most clean solution, but at least it's a solution. Then you're having space babies, the Doctor just randomly yelling, and they're gone! You don't know they're gone. You don't know shit, bruh. This guy ain't the last of the Time Lords. I feel like if we really were doing a reset thing, we would drop that shit. Anyway, how did I even get on that topic? Bro, I am a premium waffler. Anyway, QWERTY says, I could go on, but I feel like it's a waste of time to name all my grievances when others have already summed them up about as well as I could have. I just wish this season gave us a little more. I hope Russell can negotiate for more episodes in season 3 if we get that far. Regardless, I'm still a massive fan of this era and I want nothing but success for the show going forward. Wherever this show goes, I'm sticking around. I hope the next series gives us more consistency and a better thought out plot. Me too, brother, even though I love this season and I love the 15th Doctor and Ruby. Great comment. Frightening Volleyball says, I'm gonna be honest, the more I watch / rewatch and think about New Who, the more I think the 20-minute multi-part format meme is actually real. It is real! Like, at the very least, imagine if this season had one more episode and they extended all the moments up until Sutek pulling a flux and have the next episode be the finale. In general, good ep for what it was. It feels at least like Russell T Davies was trying his hardest to fit everything he wanted out of this season into an 8-episode format, and he did a pretty good job at it when it comes to the finale, I think. Hopefully next season's even better. This definitely deserves a rewatch because I genuinely have no idea what I just watched. Also, the scene where the Doctor pulls Sutek through the time vortex is literally cinema. It's so goddamn cool. My question is, how does the vortex look so much better in that episode than it does in the actual title sequence? The actual title sequence, no offense guys, but it looks fucking ass and it's out of sync with the music. Maybe if it wasn't out of the sync with the music, I would think that it looks good, but it's just genuinely disorienting because it's so out of sync with the music, which is such a shame because the music is so goddamn good. And the vortex effect itself is so goddamn good, but it just looks so goddamn cheap in this title sequence. At least they got rid of the fucking PNG coming in with my PowerPoint presentation transition. But anyway, I had to respond to this comment telling this guy that it is not a meme. It is genuinely real. And you guys know it. You all know. The 45-minute format is dead. Bury it. The 20-minute format will be our salvation. Trust me. Amen. Personally, I love this finale and I've thoroughly enjoyed this series as a whole. 73 Yards is far and away my favourite of the run. Mine too. I think what has left so many people feeling deflated by Empire of Death is not too dissimilar to what put them off 73 Yards. Both episodes play around with the idea of expectation and how we assume a certain degree of explanation will be given for what we've seen. In 73 Yards, we're invited to accept that perhaps the unknowable can sometimes be just that, whereas Empire of Death takes a different approach and asks us to examine the power of mythology mythologizing the mundane in a bid for answers. The Doctor has a line in Empire of Death that's reminiscent of Kate's in 73 Yards. Kate mentions to Ruby how humans will take something that they don't fully understand and invent the rules to make it work, while the Doctor claims that Ruby's mother was important because she was made important by others, namely Ruby and the Doctor's beliefs about her. They made their own rules by Ruby's mum because they couldn't understand her. It was the building of a legend around the events that took place on Ruby Road, combined with a universe still imbued with the residual powers of the toy maker, that gave way to Ruby's snow powers. It was this mythologizing of that past that caused concern in Maestro and agitated Sutekh for the latter an apparent creation myth involving the purest form of life, a newborn baby. It's sure to pose a threat to the god of death and bringer of total destruction. I mean, this all makes perfect sense to me. Hire this man, and hire me too. That's how powerful the legend of Ruby Sunday had become. A young woman who decided nothing more than to know where she came from, managed to conceive a story so powerful that it began to bleed into reality and was enough to bring fear to the god of all gods. Personally, I think that's a worthy resolution to this series. Quick addendum, Sutekh is not a bloody dog. He is! Anyway, thanks for the incredible comment. That was amazing. John Doe says, anyone else watch Empire of Death but lose all tension within the first 10 minutes as literally every single person dies on screen? I just had immediate Infinity War flashbacks, so I immediately realized everyone who was shown dead is going to be alive somehow. Fair. I also thought of No Way Home, you know, when he's scraping his claws through the sky. Anyone else think of that? Maybe it's just me. And now we're going back in time, back before the Empire of Death released, all the way back to the legend of Ruby Sunday. So these are what people's thoughts were like before part 2 came out. Let's see what the contrast is. Alex says, I didn't even get a hint with Just Call Me Sue. What an amazing episode. They really meant it when they said there's always a twist at the end. 10 out of 10. With only 8 episodes, I feared this finale was gonna feel rushed as hell. But man, love him or hate him, Russell T Davies has been cooking this series. This episode felt like vintage Russell T Davies' first part finale, with him using theories and twists to distract from the bigger twist coming down the tracks. Definitely felt like a Bad Wolf or Utopia, with a gradually unfolding mystery being used to distract you from what it's actually building up to. I have a theory that either the Flux, through sheer scale of death and destruction, summoned Sutekh. I'd love if it was the Flux that had summoned him. Would make people ease up on the whole series. And I responded, that would be awesome, because goddamn, it really would have been cool. Man, I just love waking up at 8:30 AM, refreshing Disney for a new Doctor Who, then watching the previous community roundup, then review. It's become ritualized. I feel bad that it's come to an end. Man, it was so fun doing all these reviews, these community reaction videos. It is a bit of a shame that I'm not going to do one for so long. Unless I suppose a controversy comes up in the fandom. I don't really see how that would happen when the show's not on the air. But man, I really enjoyed doing that. It was a great routine. But don't worry guys, there's going to be more awesome content coming straight down the line. I've got so much cool shit prepared, you don't even know. What a cliffhanger, man. Russell T Davies knows how to do a good villain reveal. And Elbrick says he is Sutekh. Where he treads, he leaves nothing but dust and darkness. So goddamn cool, man. Christ, I was on the edge of my seat. That's how you do a cliffhanger leading into a finale. That's what the series has been missing for such a long time. And here's another one from Elbrix who says, my God, there's always a twist at the end. Fuck yeah. Gabriel Wolf is 91 and he sounds perfect. Also, good catch that the rainbow swirl around 15 in the marketing is similar to Sutekh's vortex. There is a reference to 73 yards, with the TARDIS being 66, roughly the same meters away. Maintain the hype, mate. This episode was everything I wanted out of a part 1 to a finale. And I just had to respond to this guy saying, 91 you say? What you guys don't know is that me and Gabriel Wolf actually share a connection outside of the fact that we're both 91. And I'm not going to say what it is, but you guys will find out eventually. Green Goko says, obligatory comment for the next episode. Unit has child labor ×2. Also, I sort of think you would have preferred if Kate didn't revive, wouldn't you? This guy calling me out. And I think with that comment, that transitions us back to a few more comments about the finale. With Tom saying, it's been said before that Rusty Davies has been known to write himself into a hole and flop the last episode in a 2-part finale. I mean, hey, at least the man's consistent. Yeah. So it was good. It was definitely good. But like the last, The Legend of Ruby Sunday was like a 10 out of 10. So this does feel like a little bit of a letdown. One thing I will say is that in my comment last week, I wasn't so sure on the Sutekh CGI dog monster, but having seen this week's episode, it's pretty damn cool. I won't lie. Huge Smaug vibes from The Hobbit. I gotta rewatch those films. Yeah, this episode was of course very hype and all, but it felt too plot holy in very obvious ways. Like, what do you mean Sutekh's been chilling on the TARDIS for thousands of years? I'm in the Big Bang in series 5. And like you said, why is this only happening now? I saw with the channel favorite Manny in the cinema. Oh, you did? Oh my fucking god, these guys are legends! And I literally said to him just after the reveal that 14 might come back. The Doctor, with the help of a TARDIS with no suit-techiness, will defeat him and then merge into each other. It's a bit of a stretch. I'm no script writer, but it would have been cooler. That's literally the exact same idea I had, man. Oh my god. Me and Tom, we're in perfect sync. I don't know, a man can dream. Also, the cinema exclusive message from Millie Gibson was funny. She was saying, thank you all so much for staying up late and coming to the cinema for the finale. My brother in Christ, if they know that it's so late, it's hard to watch, change the scheduling. Oh my god, too real. I'm going to rewatch it tonight and see if it makes any more sense on second viewing. But yeah, right now I'm thinking 7 out of 10. My thoughts exactly. It's a bit of a shame because I now don't think it will be a contender for best New Who series. Series 1 and 5 are just simply more solid all round than this. But yeah, it's definitely top 5, maybe even top 3. I'm thinking exactly the same way. And here's one from Manny Bachelor who says, I'm not gonna lie, I left the cinema feeling so many things, but in complete honesty, I felt rather deflated. It hurts to say because the hype was so immense, but oh Russell, you really can't pull off a finale two-parter, can you, buddy? There were lots of good things. I'm not gonna say it was straight up bad, but I was quite unsatisfied. Like, definitely cool aspects, but I felt it needed to be much longer to fully flesh them out. The pacing felt all over the place, far too much time talking and so little time actually defeating Sutek. That's so true. And that ending with Ruby's mother, one, I do not give a shit. True, so true. It's so true. 2, one absolutely unsatisfying conclusion. Why set something up to have such a regular outcome? Why make such a song and dance of it? Many things felt half-baked. I feel as on rewatches I would appreciate it more because there was so much to love, but due to the anticipation and very high expectations, sadly the flaws are more noticeable. But why was Sutek so intrigued? Blood reading the YouTube comments like, nah, for real guys, who is Ruby Sunday's mum though? Bro was formulating his own theories? Nah guys, trust me, I got the insider knowledge. It's the Rani, trust. Like, why was bro so curious? Did I miss something? Bro pulled up to bring his gift of death, but more importantly, to get to the bottom of the mystery. When you think of it, Sutek is probably the biggest Doctor Who fan of them all. He's been sitting back and watching this shit for centuries. I bet he suspiciously loved Trial of a Time Lord. That fucking guy. Of course, Sutek is a season 23 and 24 fan. But honestly, man, I actually thought they'd bring 14 back. Wouldn't have that worked so well? It would have brought in the fact that there were 2 TARDISes and maybe he'd be able to explain by generation and somewhat conclude all that. Felt like a missed opportunity for me. I was waiting for the twist at the end. They've lied to me. There is in fact not always a twist at the end. Russell, I love you, but you could only be masterful up to a point. He's gonna whipped out a masterpiece of a first part and has found himself in the corner for the second. Bro's never gonna grow out of it. For me, this season was very close to the best of the modern era, but now I'm not so sure. See how I feel on subsequent rewatches, who knows? I might love it tomorrow. What a banger of a comment. Eric is waiting, another goat of the comment section, says, after thinking about it, I am quite mixed on this finale. I think it's too anticlimactic for the supposed god of death, and it felt really rushed to me. I really like seeing Ruby meeting her mom, and the last scene with the Doctor and Ruby. It definitely still entertaining and tense to watch, but it fell flat for a finale that was supposed to have massive stakes. The more and more I think about this finale, the more I hate it. As much as I loved watching this finale, it just has a lot of problems. Perfectly fair. Watermelon Volcano says, I have a lot of thoughts on this. I think emotionally and thematically this episode was very, very good, but everything else kind of sucked. True? Question mark? And this really hurts to say as I'm someone who has adored season 1 so far. I remember saying during the spoon scene that so far the episode has been really, really good, but I really hope it starts picking up. And then it never picked up. It was a slow emotional burn of an episode, but that works in 73 yards, but not here at all. Legend of Ruby Sunday built up so much hype just for Sutek to be a non-factor. There was so much time in this episode and it still feels like not a whole lot happened. The episode in a vacuum was good, but as a finale, it was not only underwhelming, but unsatisfying, which is a shame as it has so many opportunities to be a slam dunk. This was my second favourite season of New Who. I absolutely adored and think it was peak, but this finale just left such a sour taste in my mouth. There were obviously a lot of positives. Sutek always being there was awesome. The emotions of every character was done very well, and the concept itself was really, really good. But it's like they took all of the brilliant tension in Legend of Ruby Sunday, and then in the first 5 minutes killed everyone off, immediately killing all the tension, and then completely misused Sutek, making the entire plot feel lackluster. I hope this episode will grow on me with time, but as of right now, it missed the mark massively as a finale. Definitely very true, definitely very fair. Oh yeah, I think for me, part of the reason why I thought the 14th Doctor was going to show up is because that woman in the spoon scene was like, there was this man who said that the death wave goes through the family line or whatever. Someone came in and he told me all about that, and I was immediately thinking, well, who would know about the death wave? Well, maybe the Doctor would know. Well, the Doctor's here. Maybe it's the other Doctor that we know know about. And so I thought that was, you know, a little bit of subtle foreshadowing that maybe the other Doctor would show up. I guess not. And here's the final one from Kyle Reese, who says, I won't lie, I didn't really like it. Sutekh was defeated way too easy, and very quickly he was defeated like half an hour in, and we went back to Unit HQ to see Morris eat some pizza, and everyone is having a great time. Why? So true. The whole feel of that just felt off to me. Most of the people in that room were turned to dust, and they just act like way too normal about it. I thought the whole Ruby's mother was just badly done. I don't have an issue with her being a normal person. I just thought it wasn't handled very well. And like you said, it was just boring. Also, the thing about Ruby's mum pointed at the Ruby Road sign, and it was played as she named me. How? Did anyone see her pointing at the sign? I thought she didn't point the first time, and then she changed it. So why didn't she point the first time? I just thought it was badly done. They finally gave us a slightly extended episode, and that's what we get. Very disappointed. There's something about the Doctor and Sutekh's reunion that just doesn't work for me. I can't really think why. I just much prefer the reunion with the Toymaker personally. Maybe it was the CGI of Sutekh that was a problem, I'm not sure. Sutekh being around the TARDIS since Pyramids of Mars is a good reveal, but if you think about it for 2 seconds, it makes no sense. And for Sutekh to be defeated like that half an hour in, when we're supposed to believe Sutekh has been basically traveling with the Doctor for over 10 incarnations, and for him to be defeated just that quick was so disappointing. I thought the scene with the Doctor and Ruby was very unearned. The Doctor doing the whole "you changed me" just didn't feel earned, and to me felt quite forced. They've only had 9 on-screen adventures together, and I'd say only the first 3 we really got to see them properly interact and build a relationship. The rest we didn't see them together much. In Boom, they had a small moment with Ruby trying to keep the Doctor calm, but then she was dead for basically the rest of the episode. 73 yards, the Doctor wasn't there. Don't Bubble, they were on a screen talking to Lindy. In Rogue, the Doctor was focusing on Rogue. It didn't give much time to connect properly. This is the problem with a shorter episode count. That line just didn't work for me. I did quite like the scene between the Doctor and the woman on the planet. I thought that was good. Mrs. Flood had a Mary Poppins vibe at the end with her umbrella. Mary Poppins as the Time Lord confirmed. So overall, this episode didn't really work for me. I'll give it either a 5.5 or a 6 out of 10. True. W comment. Kyle Reese, as always, coming in and spitting facts. Oh, and here's an extra one just at the very end from 6th Doctor Fan 84. Wow, Empire of Death is a great 5/4 of a second parter. Sutekh was magnificent, and I think despite the short screen time, I think his performance was wonderful. Big W to Gabriel Wolfe. Integrating the Remember TARDIS was such a neat thing despite the quality of Tales of the TARDIS, and the 6th coat is goated still. True! Even though it's not the good version of the 6th Doctor's outfit. It's the season 23 version. Anyway, my main issue comes down to this episode beginning with what I think should have starred in the Legend of Ruby Sunday to give the rest more time. The reveal of Ruby Sunday's mother was very sweet, and I'm glad the trope of don't talk to the character it isn't fair didn't come into play. My theory for Mrs. Flood is that she is Romana 3, since the outfit imitation feels a lot like her. That's very true. Go with episode, even if one of the weaker ones. Dilemma out of 10. That being said, it is not my goat twin dilemma. 10 out of 10, baby. True. And those are all the comments that I have collected for the video. What an intense video to make. Holy shit, this one was crazy. I hope you all enjoyed though, and I do deeply apologize if your comment wasn't included in the video. I tried to include as many as I possibly could. This raw recording file of just the comments, not even the intro, just the comments, is over 90 minutes long. My voice is cooked, bruh. I have read as many comments as I possibly can. I'm gonna have to go back and screenshot all of them as well. I'll do that later. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. If you've gotten to this point in the video, do me a massive favor, leave a like, subscribe in the video. I hope you enjoyed listening to this in the background or watching it. You know, I don't know how people watch these videos. You guys listen to it while playing Minecraft, don't you? But anyway, as always, I hope you enjoy. A massive shout out, as always, to all of the members, and a special thanks to Kyle Reese. With all that said, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.